Good evening. I'm Mary Ray Bragg, a member of the Dubuque League of Women Voters and a past president of the Iowa League of Women Voters. The League is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages informed and active citizen participation in government. Membership is open to any citizen 18 years of age or older. We would like to thank the Dubuque County Supervisor candidates and Iowa House District 72 for their participation this evening. And okay, I was going to say, this is kind of a historic event because as far as we know in Dubuque County, there has never been a Republican primary. And so we're very excited to have this participation this evening. Thank you. Because the June 4th election is a Republican primary to determine who will proceed to the November ballot, only those voters registered as Republicans can vote for the supervisor candidates, and only those voters registered as Republicans and residing in Iowa House District 72 will be able to vote for House candidates. If you aren't sure if you live in District 72, you can contact the Secretary of State office, our county auditor's office, or use the QR code on the postcard you received from the county this week, or the QR code provided in the League's political directory. So be sure to pick up a political directory on your way out. There are two candidates running for Dubuque County Supervisor: incumbent Supervisor Harley Potoff and Scott E. Nelson, and two candidates running for Iowa House District 72, Jennifer Smith and Rod Warnke. And Mr. Potoff, we will begin with you. Please tell us why you are running for Dubuque County Supervisor.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I am running to continue the work that I've been doing over the last 3 years. I have several projects in the works that we're trying to get completed. I'm on the This is Iowa board for the Field of Dreams project, where we're trying to get the stadium constructed out there. I'm on the DRA board, and we just had the groundbreaking April 23rd for the new hotel down there. And just a lot of projects going, and I want to keep moving Dubuque and Dubuque County forward.
Thank you. And Mr. Nelson.
I've long been interested in pursuing a position like this, but I just recently, within less than a year, we've become empty nesters, and I've found the time to go ahead and pursue a position like this, and I have some idea of what it entails, but maybe not all of it. But I assume that everybody that decided to become a county supervisor didn't know everything it entailed when they started either. So I'm looking forward to represent citizens of Dubuque County, and just be a positive person for the position. So thanks. Thank you, Mary Ann. Mary Ray. I'm sorry, Mary Ray.
Jennifer Smith, please.
First off, I just want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum. This is an extremely important event to have. I am an economics professor at a local college. I have a lot to offer from my economic perspective, I think, in making sure that when they do put forward legislation, they're looking at not just what they're trying to fix, but also the second and third impacts. A lot of times people are very surprised as to what happens. Oh, we didn't expect that to happen. And if you would have looked at it at an economic standpoint, you could have maybe foreseen some of those. I really am running because I have a niece and a nephew who are the loves of my life. And when I started to see the direction of things were not going in a way that I thought was best for them, I wanted to make sure I could say to them that I was willing to stand up and to put myself on the line in order to secure their future and to try to keep things as good for them as I possibly can. That's really why I run, and I am extremely concerned about our educational system and about things that are going on for the youth in this country.
Thank you. Mr. Warnke?
Thank you, Mary Ray. I'm running for this position because Dubuque needs a voice in the majority party in Des Moines. We're currently represented by people who don't work across the aisle very well. I've spent some time talking with the leadership of the Republican Party in Des Moines, Pat Grassley and the others, and the indication is that our representatives are not able to have a civil conversation with the other party. Dubuque needs better. Dubuque has a lot of priorities that need to be addressed by Des Moines. We need a voice in that party, and I'm running to be that voice.
Thank you. Now, the first question that I'll be asking will be one that we will ask all of you to respond to. Iowa will receive $345 million over several years in opioid settlement funds. Each Iowa county will receive a portion of these funds. How should the state and county spend these funds, and who should decide how they are spent? So we'll start with Mr. Nelson.
Fortunately, I don't have a lot of experience with opioid addiction. I do have a lot of experience with other addictions. I have a large percentage of my family, not a large percentage, that doesn't sound right, with mental health issues. So opioids don't really fall into that. But as far as treatment for those opioids and other things similar to that, the county and the city, I know the city, has some treatment centers for things like that, but the county, I don't know that until they're admitted. There's not a lot of treatment through Dubuque County. Once somebody is admitted, then there's treatment, but the people that take care of the people that are admitted are very understaffed, underpaid, and they just they struggle with taking care of the number of people that fall into that category with opioid addictions and other addictions and other mental health crises. So,
Thank you. And Jennifer, please.
The opioid crisis is something that we definitely need to deal with. And honestly, when you have a drug addiction, it is tied in with our mental health facilities. I was just having a long conversation with someone who's actively involved and employed by the mental health situation or a system in Dubuque. And one of the things that they were saying is that it's very difficult to report from one facility to another to share those records because they are on different systems. So I think one of the things that we could use that money for would be to help streamline those systems so that the different agencies are all on the same system, and now we can easily share, okay, we've sent this person to this facility, we've sent this person to this facility, to make sure people are not falling through the cracks. I think we need to make sure we increase access to care. A lot of times people are not sure that they can get into care, or people who are employed and have some sort of income do not have access to that care. They have to be unemployed or low income. And I think we need to remember that this is across the spectrum. So figuring out how, in order to get some access to care, as well as to make sure that our healthcare providers are paid adequately. This is a tough field to be in. You are dealing with people who can be violent, people who are not sure what day it is or what is happening around them because of their addiction, because of their mental issues. And so we need to make sure that those people who are dealing with and trying to help make them better are being paid adequately for those positions.
Mr. Warnke.
All right, the money for the opioid settlement needs to be distributed by the state to the counties in a formula that recognizes where the biggest problems are. You can't divide the money equally. You need to target it to the problems. And the counties need to spend this money in a way that is absolutely directly targeted at opioid problems, not at regular budget items, and not hiring extra people to push papers around the desk. We need to fund programs that make sure that our first responders have the ability, the material, the training to handle an opioid situation appropriately. And then we need to provide some education for the people who are most likely to become addicted. We need to deal with the doctors who prescribe these so that they're better understanding how to avoid getting someone addicted to them. And it's a multifaceted problem, but in the end, the county should be where this money gets spent.
Thank you. Our next question is for our supervisor candidates. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Harley. Obviously, I've not done this enough, so, yes, please.
The county has received opioid funds from the settlement already. We're running it through the health department. They have hired on another person using these funds that's going to be the outreach person for the opioid issues. They've spent some money on the nasal spray for overdoses, that to make it more accessible, that a family member could go out to the health department and pick it up. They wouldn't have to go to like Hardig's or wherever to get it. It's free there, but this would be a little more discreet for a family member that wants to keep it secret. But all the funds that we have received and will receive are being directed at the opioid epidemic.
Okay. Thank you. And again, I apologize.
No problem.
So this next question then is for our supervisors candidates. And county supervisors now have the ability to alter or abolish the Forest Reserve Program. What, if any, steps should be taken regarding this program? And Mr. Potterfield, we'll start with you.
I believe the Forest Reserve Program is a good program. We have some areas that I guess are questionable. I think there is some good in moving it up to like a 5-acre tract instead of it's 2 acres or more right now. And there's a lot of it that isn't qualifying. It doesn't have the right number of trees or the right kind of trees. I know the conservation director is inspecting a lot of them, and some are getting removed because of the lack of following the rules per se. But I believe the program should stay in effect.
Mr. Nelson?
I agree with Harley. I have land in a forest reserve, and we actually had someone from the county come out, and they as long as it's there, we have people available to come out and count the number of trees that are in the preserve. I think there, like everything, there's things that are abused through county programs. But if you have 2 acres that falls under a certain number of trees on that property of a certain type, then it should remain in that forest preserve. If we don't have anybody from the county or the county conservation group that has time to go out and actually physically walk the property, then to find out if it falls into that, then. But in and of itself it's a good program. So.
Now, our next question will be for our House of Representative candidates. Iowa's population is aging, some of us better than others. Nursing homes are having difficulty financially, as well as having problems recruiting and retaining staff. Does the state have a way of addressing these problems? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Smith.
I think one of the things that we can do is look at the credentialing and the way in which we are training some of the CNAs and some of the staff. I'm certainly not in favor of just hiring anybody, because we do need to have training, because there are special care that is needed to give to these nursing homes. But I think we need to make sure that people are able to get access to those, whether it be through some sort of work-study program. I think one of the things we need to do is a lot of them through like high schools. We have other areas, other fields of study other than maybe a college degree. We need to look at how can we get some of those work-study programs to get people involved and have them understand that this is a field for them to be able to go into. I think we also need to look at maybe giving people more resources for them to be able to stay in their own homes. I think a lot of times people are, if they're capable. People are more comfortable and will actually do better if they stay in their home. So what kind of resources can we give for them to stay home?
Mr. Warnke.
Yeah, you've identified two problems, the training and the nursing home struggling. Clearly, if a nursing home is struggling, it needs to reevaluate the situations that have led to that, why the income from the patient can't fully take care of the necessities of caring for them. And in general, the state can do that by assessing the regulations that it places upon the nursing home, the paperwork requirement to a fully comprehensive review to see what's necessary and what's not. Many of our state processes continue to be the same as they were 30 and 40 years ago before technology became much of a labor saver as it is. And we need to look at the regulations that we are putting upon people and upon businesses to see what we can do to decrease the influence and the size and the pressure that government puts on people. In terms of training, we need to look at recruiting people into the healthcare field and doing what we can to make sure that the training is appropriate for what is going on. In the end, I don't have a lot of experience in that field, but I know that as we age, healthcare is going to become more and more and more important, and certainly we'll need to address that.
Thank you. Now a question for our supervisors, and we'll start with you, Mr. Nelson. What did the county learn from the Dyersville money transfer, and how can loss of funds be prevented in the future?
I'm not entirely sure that the county has learned anything from this debacle, to be honest with you. I have friends in the banking industry, and I personally, I run a business, and I've done a wire transfer from the state of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, north of Philadelphia, to Iowa. And the things that happened during the Dyersville transfer in a private sector, the person in charge of that, I feel would have already have been fired. This happened way back in December 7th. There are things set up in the banking industry and with auditors and with treasurers and with anybody else in the banking industry that are set up so that things like this don't happen. There are test runs. There's I don't know. And especially this amount of money, I don't know that anything has transpired that they figured out how to do this right. It seems like just a giant mess, to be honest with you. And I've talked to multiple people and bankers that agree that this should have never happened.
Mr. Potoff.
There was obviously an issue. The system got hacked. A professional hacker got in and was able to intercept the funds. There have been changes made to policy to try to prevent it from ever happening again. We thought we were safe. We've used the system since I've been there. I've approved millions of dollars worth of claims that have been paid through this, and we never had an issue. But that being said, as soon as they come out with new cyber security, somebody's trying to get around it. Throwing blame at people isn't going to solve the problem. I think we have to work together to come to a solution. How we're going to handle this between the insurance companies with Dyersville, that we have a lot of partnerships with Dyersville. We need to work together to solve the problem. Mr. Nelson said about the banks, well, obviously the banks had a lot of flaws then too, because the money went through probably 3 or 4 banks that they were tracked to. So obviously the banks don't really have too good a grasp on it, so.
Thank you. This is for our House candidates. The Iowa legislature has passed an income tax cut to a 3.8% flat tax. How will cutting taxes affect the state's and county budgets? And we'll start with you, Mr. Warnke.
All right. Cutting taxes is absolutely necessary. Iowa remains a high-tax state. The best way to address that situation is to reduce the size of government and to thereby reduce the need for taxation, and then to reduce the taxation. That's what the Republicans in the Iowa legislature are all about, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Before long, Iowa will have a 0% income tax, and that's a good thing. We're going to continue to shrink the size of government. That's a very good thing. Iowa does not need to be a high-tax state. And we're not a high-tax state because we provide so many services. We're a high-tax state because we have too much government. Our system of government is more than 100 years old, and it is duplicative and needs to be streamlined. And one of the ways you're going to force that on local governments is to make them make the hard choices, because there's not as much money in the till as they want to spend.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Excuse me. The reduction in taxes, if we have looked at what's been going on across the country, eliminating the state income tax is actually increasing the amount of businesses that come into a state. So I don't know that it's necessarily going to reduce the taxes for, or the budgets for a lot of counties, because we're going to be getting it from other sources. We still have our sales tax. We still have all of the other taxes, gas taxes, those kind of things. So what's going to happen is we're going to increase our tax base by having a larger population and more people moving in. While we have that, what will also allow us to, as Rod says, we're going to reduce the size of government and streamline it. We have a lot of multiple agencies that are doing exactly the same thing, so people are getting multiple service from different agencies, and some of those agencies, they're repeating the same services, and therefore it's not actually helping people be able to better themselves, because they're just getting held up one by one agency after another. So if we can actually get those all to work together, where we can get them into the different services to help them be able to stand on their own 2 feet, we will be much better off, rather than having them go to 3 different agencies to get exactly the same thing. That will actually also help then reduce the budgets by not having the multiple places for the same service.
Thank you. Our next question is asked of everyone who's running now, and it is, what is your position about funding mental health services, especially in our jails and rural areas, which are underserved? And we will start with Ms. Smith.
Mental health services, it's a large issue, our mental health, and we're going to continue to be that way. I think there's been a lot of people, especially after COVID, who have found themselves to be very alone, and they're feeling very isolated, and they're not sure how to cope with these feelings that they have. So we need to continue to service these. As I was saying earlier, we need to make sure that our services are streamlined, that we have communication between the different agencies that are out there, making sure that the individuals are getting to the correct agency. I have also talked to people who are in that service, into that field, and that are saying that we have a lot of little silos. People are protecting themselves, and sometimes the patient themselves get lost. We need to make sure that communication is open and the individuals that are looking for help are being sent to the appropriate agency, not being sent to the same agency that may not have exactly the service that they need. Or to try a different type of help or therapy or whatever service that they need there. Maybe need to go to a different agency, and we need to make sure that that is allowed to be able to happen. I think that would help a lot of the bottlenecks, because people get bottlenecked into one agency where maybe a different agency has an opening that would be able to help that individual. And so we need to get more cooperation, I think, between the different agencies.
Thank you. Mr. Warnke.
It becomes difficult to disagree with somebody who said something well. And I'm not going to try to disagree with what Jennifer just said, because on a lot of things, we're pretty much right down the line together. Mental health is clearly an underserved need in the community. Probably need to fund most of that at the state level. But again, we're looking at streamlining the process for providing those services and making sure that the needed things get done, and that we're not letting people slip through the cracks. Mental health's a little more difficult to identify those problems that exist. Oftentimes, things that could be dealt with quickly and easily when it's a small issue don't become visible until it's a bigger issue. But we continue to work to fund that at the state level, and then making sure that the counties play their part as well.
Mr. Potoff.
The county currently does fund very little of the mental health. The regional governing board, or East Central Region, covers all of the mental health issues, and that's funding from the state that covers that. The county handles more of the substance abuse issues. If there's commingled issues, there is some collaboration between the East Central Region and the county to get those people the help they need. But this funding for the mental health strictly is from the state.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
I totally in agreement with all of them, and yeah, most of that funding comes from the state, but we do have a gal that works through the state that takes care of a lot of local issues. And again, I think I may have said this before. She's completely overstaffed. She's well over 300 people a month. And she is limited to 31 hours a week through her, which, well, maybe nobody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she's limited through the county supervisors as to 31 hours a week to take care of over 300 people a month that she's required to spend at least 30 minutes with. Yeah, clearly there's a major problem there. There's no way that she can, and these are just people that are admitted in Dubuque County. There's no way she can spend 30 minutes a month with each one of these people at 31 hours a week. So clearly there's a giant issue with that.
Okay. Thank you. Our next question is also for both offices. Beginning in September 2023, Illinois courts no longer use a cash bail system. Cash bail is disproportionately difficult for poor people. Are there ways that Dubuque or the state can make the system more just for the low-income people? And we'll start with Mr. Warnke.
Oh, boy. We need cash bail, especially for violent crime. Illinois got the problem, the same problem that New York has, that California has. People are committing crimes, getting out without bail, and immediately committing the same crime over and over and over again. The problem is not that poor people are getting arrested. The problem is that criminals are running the streets wild. They have chosen a very poor way to address what they see as a serious problem. The state can look at the bails that are required for certain offenses, but if law enforcement has a reasonable suspicion to arrest someone for a crime, they should not be on the streets unless they can post a reasonable bail that makes it clear that they're going to appear. That's all.
Mr. Potoff.
After being in law enforcement for 33 years, the system that we have here, I believe, is working. The lower misdemeanor type crimes are handled appropriately, and I think the serious crimes, they do have a good bond on them. There are obviously some serious, simple misdemeanors that may have higher bonds, but there's issues with mental health. They're holding them in jail to get someone in to help them with their issues. But I think the system here is working. Obviously, as Rod said, it's not working in Chicago and other places.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, I don't know that I can take a better stance than these two fellows, especially Harley, who has been in law enforcement all these years. To model our bail procedures or anything, to model anything after Illinois or Chicago, it just seems like a terrible idea. I think what we have now works very well, and especially, like Harley and Rod said, especially with someone who's been in law enforcement all these years, why change what's working?
Okay, thank you. And the next question.
Nope, I haven't answered.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Sorry.
That's all right. There's a lot going on. I would say that I am not in favor of eliminating cash bail. There's a problem there. Any place that has tried that has seen a drastic increase in crime rates. And of course, there's no consequences for their behavior. There is going to be people who are going to enact in that behavior because they don't have any recourse for it. I do want to make sure that the cash bail is commensurate to the crime that they are being charged with. So we don't need $1 million bond for someone who has, shoplifted a Pepsi. That would be a little bit out of whack. So as long as they are continuing to be commensurate with the crime, then I don't have an issue with it. I think that the problem is more of a societal issue in that people are not realizing that crime is not good for society and that crime is not being punished and there are not consequences for people's behavior. I think that's more the issue than it is the cash bail.
Okay, thank you. Again, for everyone, this next question. What is your position about CO2 pipelines and the use of eminent domain to secure right-of-ways, as well as using copious amounts of water when Iowa has areas of drought? And we'll start with Mr. Potoff.
I've been to numerous meetings on the CO2 pipelines, talked to a lot of people regarding it. I have very little faith that the process is working. I'm not in favor of eminent domain for it. There's a lot of false information put out regarding the CO2. They're trying to make you believe that as they're processing the corn, it produces more CO2. That is not the case. The carbon that the corn uses to grow, once it's processed, it's just releasing that carbon that it took out of the air. It's not multiplying the carbon. It's a very dangerous gas. I don't think I would want it anywhere close to my house, and I'm sure most people in this room wouldn't want it close to their house. So I am not in favor of it, and definitely not in favor of any eminent domain for using it.
Mr. Nelson.
Eminent domain in and of itself is supposed to be a benefit to everybody in the community. Forced eminent domain, I am totally against. Again, like Harley said, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the process of taking CO2 emissions from the ethanol plants and compressing it into a liquid and then put it into a pipeline it's done, and it's done easily, but as it is compressed liquid and it's piped across the country or your backyard, during an eruption, it's not only dangerous, it is deadly. And so eminent domain in and of itself is a good thing. Forced eminent domain, I am totally against, and especially with the CO2, the carbon pipeline. People want you to believe that there's an excess of carbon, CO2 in the air. We are not in an excess of CO2 right now in Iowa. So to try and capture that and transport it somewhere doesn't make any sense, and it only benefits the people at the other end on the federal level that are profiting major money.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Miss-
I am not in favor of eminent domain ever to be used to be then that given to a private institution or a private company. That's what essentially is happening here, that a private company wants to put a pipeline through people's property and they're wanting to take it through eminent domain. That is not what it was ever intended for, and I am totally against that from the start. As for the pipeline itself, there is a lot of question as to how the CO2 mitigation is actually working through the pipeline and through the carbon capture. If the pipeline does rupture, it causes severe health issues, ends up with a lot of people in the hospital, as well as it kills a lot of livestock and crops that are around in Iowa. That's a big deal. I'm concerned a little bit about the storage. I have not been able to find any information that can guarantee you that the storage is for long term or that it is safe, that it won't escape. If it does escape, we're talking severe danger and loss of life and health issues for people. And I'm not sure that it has been studied well enough. And from everything that I have been able to find, I have not been able to find anything that has given me those assurances. There is also a question as to whether it is cost effective. It is extremely expensive to capture the carbon and then to transport it. And if you do that and force that onto companies to do it this way, it does get to question as to what's going to happen with the price of the products that we are dealing with. And then that's going to hit every consumer. We are already in trouble.
Thank you. Mr. Warnke.
The CO2 pipelines are basically just another way for somebody to weasel some money out of the government. And I do not support using eminent domain at all for a private business. Any private business, especially one that's transporting a deadly product across people's property. I've been on the site of a natural gas pipeline rupture and explosion, and it's not pretty. But when that happens, you have a huge fire, and everybody knows where the problem is. If a CO2 pipeline is to rupture, it's an invisible gas, and you won't know until things start dying. And that's a very scary situation. There's not been enough research done and not enough safety involved in putting the plans together for these things. We need to put the brakes on it. And we certainly cannot be using eminent domain to benefit a private business. That's just anti-American. That's socialism. Not going to happen. I'll fight it to my dying breath.
Thank you. Now we have a question for our county supervisor candidates. And it's very simple, but it's a big one. What do you believe is the biggest challenge to our county? And we'll start with Mr. Nelson.
I think I guess one of the biggest challenges is it seems that our county, along with our city, is very, very much divided, both politically and financially. And if I know that there's been discussions about bringing in, we have 3 supervisors now, and it seems to work. But there's been discussion about bringing in 5 supervisors. But I think the nature or the demographic of Dubuque and Dubuque County, if we bring in 5 supervisors, I think we're just going to be 3-2 as opposed to 2-1. We need to find some kind of common ground as a county that we can all, work together as opposed to this very polarized, opposition with each other, I guess.
Mr. Potoff, what do you believe is Dubuque County's biggest challenge?
One of the biggest issues we have right now is our housing. We need more housing units. I believe the city did a study last year, and we were like 1,100 housing units short. People want to move here, but you have to have a place to live. The only way to fill our jobs is to get some housing that we can get people moving here. There were a lot of people that moved 2 years ago. The housing market blew up in this area. People would put their house on the market for $250,000 and get over $300,000. That's how high of a demand housing was. It has eased up some. There have been a lot of new housing units brought onto the market. But for our workforce and our population growth, we have to have that. We have to have the housing for our workforce.
Okay, thank you. Now, the next question is for our House candidates, and we'll start with Mr. Warnke. Who should decide to ban certain books from public libraries and schools? Local school boards and libraries, or should every public school and library in Iowa ban the same objectionable books?
The standard for an objectionable book needs to be uniform. What you've presented is a very difficult conundrum. How do you define what is objectionable? Is it objectionable only in the children's section, or is it objectionable everywhere? Hopefully there would be sections that only adults are allowed to check books out of, that a lot more things are agreeable than what's in the 5-year-old section. Those decisions have to be made at some sort of central level. The state is the best level to make that happen in terms of setting the standard for what is objectionable and what should be banned. If you go to the situation of saying, well, specific titles, again, you're just chasing after things after they're out in the public view. Trying to set a standard is difficult in and of itself, because if you word things appropriately, then it's hard for everybody to understand that the same way. It's a difficult situation, but in the end, the state needs to take the lead and to say, these are the standards for books for this age group that should not be presented in a public school and perhaps in a public library.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Smith.
I see these as 2 separate issues. One is whether or not books should be banned in a public library, and one on whether or not they should be in a school library. A school library is a different situation. If you are not able to read a book in a public square or talk about those things with a child that you would see on the street, then they should not be in a school library. They need to be age appropriate and relevant to the educational system that is going on in the curriculum that is going on within the school. That is one level. Now, as for a public library has every right to have every book that they want. I don't have any issues with any book being available for anybody to read in a public library. Now, maybe there need to be some areas where these are adults only and children are not allowed. They do have a children's section. Maybe we need to have an adults only section. But I am not in favor of banning books out of a public library. But a school library, it needs to be age appropriate to that school and be relevant to the curriculum that this child is learning within the school. The school is a different entity than the public library. I am not in favor of banning any books at all in the public realm.
Thank you. Our next question is for all of our candidates. And we will be starting with Mr. Nelson this time around. Do you have a position about protecting public drinking water systems as well as private wells in Northeast Iowa, where karst topography, which is porous and makes streams and groundwater vulnerable to fertilizer and manure runoff? So, as I said, Mr. Nelson, you want to start with that?
This is a good, interesting question. I run a restaurant in Western Dubuque, and we are in the county, and we are a public water supply. The DNR, the EPA, mainly the DNR, the EPA doesn't interfere unless you don't comply with the DNR. And we are at all sides surrounded by farm fields, and if somebody isn't maintaining, the water quality, we had some issues before we bought this property where there were some things through COVID that they weren't able to test and follow up with, but the water supply was compromised, I guess is a good word. But as a business owner who has a public water supply, of course we want to treat and give the cleanest water that we possibly can to our people and customers and to anybody in the area. So yeah, we maintain all the DNR regulations. So.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
We do want our water supply to be as safe as possible. My father used to work in the water program in the water department, and so I know it's a very complicated and difficult area to be within. I think the regulations and I think the best thing we can do is to do continually testing and making sure that we are maintaining our standards. When you're talking about manure and fertilizer runoff, that depends a lot on what's going on the weather. So it's not a standard thing. When we have a big rain, we need to make sure that we are checking to make sure that our water is in still maintaining our standards. I think that we have done a pretty good job. We also do need to make sure, look at the distribution system and the pipes that we have within the cities to make sure that they are up to code and that they are being well maintained and relatively new, and that we don't lose them through the degradation and through age.
Mr. Warnke?
Okay, obviously water quality is critical. It's the foundation of life. However, I'm unaware of any problems, any failings, any shortcomings with the current system of monitoring and testing and remediation when necessary. At the current time, I don't see any need to change. We'll certainly entertain any information that I don't currently have about that situation, but I think Iowa's doing a good job.
Thank you. Mr. Potoff?
The county works closely with the Soil and Water Conservation Commission. There is testing done throughout the county on all the watersheds. We do have issues with nitrates in the water and phosphates. A lot of the nitrates are runoff from agricultural. We're working with the soil and water to get more buffer strips in, more fall seeding, cover crops to prevent the erosion that's putting these chemicals in to the creeks and streams. Everybody wants clean water, whether you're on a city or a private well. If you're on a private well, you have to understand there's thousands upon thousands of gallons being pumped out of these caverns. We're not replacing it as fast as we're taking it out. So we have to learn to create, I guess, clean water through wetlands, buffer strips to get things back. There's issues with the forever chemicals being in the water in the city here, the PFAS. And it's going to be a big issue in the future, I'm afraid. So there's a lot of issues we have to look at.
Thank you. All right, for now, a question for all of the candidates, and we'll be starting with Ms. Smith. What do you see as the outcome of redirecting AEA funding?
Okay. I know there's been a lot of concern over the change in the AEA policies. I have read the legislation, and what I have seen is that it is actually opening up the ability to make sure that the services are being provided. If you like the AEA and the school board is on board, they can continue to use the AEA. They are allowed to use that funding for the AEA, and nothing will change. However, what it has done is it has opened up the ability for you to look at a different organization and maybe find a service that the AEA currently doesn't have. So to me, what it is doing is actually making things better. It is giving more discretion to the individual schools, to the school districts, to make sure that their students are being serviced in the best way possible. Nobody is wanting to take away AEAs from anybody. What they are doing is wanting to make sure that there is more available for students who need the services. And also, the other thing that is not being talked about a lot within this AEA legislation is that they are going to put forward a study. The information or the data that was used in order to write this legislation is about 10 years old. So they are wanting to really study and make sure that the AEAs are giving the services that are available to make sure that the funding is going to the right location and the students are getting what they need.
Thank you. Mr. Warnke.
The AEA bill introduces accountability to the AEA system, and it gives the local school district power over the money that's being spent for their students. The vast majority of school districts in Iowa are very happy with the services they get from their AEA, and there will be no change in those situations. But the school district that wants better services, more accountability from their AEA, they now have the power to do that, and that's a good thing. There's no real change in funding ability for the AEA. It's just a situation where the power has been transferred closer to the people who are receiving the services, and that's a good thing for Iowa. You'll see over time that the AEAs will be more responsive, and they're not going out of business. They're not going to shrivel up and go away. They're just going to become better at what they do because there's now more of a carrot at the end of that stick. They have to keep their customers happy.
Thank you. Mr. Potoff.
That's my understanding of it. It's basically just changing where the money's going to give the school districts more opportunity to check other areas if they have a student that need some special educational item that they can go there and get it if they can't get it here. So,
Mr. Nelson.
Yes, that's my understanding of the AEA, the change of the legislation. It just puts the control in the individual school, which I think is probably definitely for the best. So that's my understanding of it too.
Thank you. The next question is kind of a general one, so put on your hats and kind of think big picture. And the question is climate change real? Is it a problem? If it is a problem, what steps should we take to solve it? And of course, we're talking locally as well as across the state. And we'll start with Mr. Warnke.
Okay, climate change is not a huge problem. We are in a world that's really, really, really old, and time has changed the temperature, the weather, the general range of temperatures goes up and down over time. The same people who are now telling us the world's getting way too hot, when I was a teenager, oh, the world's going to get way too cold and we're going to have an ice age. They are using the same data, they're just interpreting it differently now. Climate change is not a critical issue. It's natural. It's not man-made, in my opinion. And just look at all of the people who are buying the oceanfront property. Same people who 20 years ago said the oceans are going to rise and destroy all of this oceanfront property. You know, Barack Obama spent millions and millions of dollars on oceanfront property after declaring that climate change was a real problem. Those two things don't measure up. Thank you.
Mr. Potoff.
I'm not a firm believer in the climate change. When I went to school several years ago, like you, we had history, and all the valleys and stuff around here were reportedly made from glaciers going through here. So obviously it got warm years ago, or the glaciers wouldn't have came down. So it's just a cycle that we're going through. That's my personal belief on it.
Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, I agree that climate change is there may be issues in and of itself right now with some minor things. This kind of falls back on with the carbon. You know, they want to capture the CO2 emissions from the ethanol plants because there's too much CO2 in the environment. But in the state of Iowa, we are almost deficient on the amount of CO2 that's in our air for crop production and corn production. And like Rod said, if anybody was worried about the oceans rising, there's no bank in the world that would borrow money to people to buy oceanfront property. So,
Okay. And Ms. Smith.
Okay. The climate changes. It does. It's natural. Is it man-made? I don't believe it is man-made. Let's be real. The Earth, if it would decide that it wanted to get rid of humanity, it's going to cough and we're gone. We don't have control over that. I do find it to be very interesting. We can't predict when we're having a storm to full accuracy. So I don't know how you can go out there and predict what's going to happen in 100 years. As a statistician, I can tell you that the data collection and the studies that are being put out there, they talk about the hockey stick. There is major questions about that study, and that is the one that is being used to pack a lot of this information. There is also a lot of history about the Earth that is being forgotten. We have solar flares, which is going to have an impact on the temperatures of the world. We also have the fact that we are coming out of a mini ice age, and have, because we do that for centuries when we're coming, and so that's going to result in warmer temperatures. The other issues that are happening is that there are studies out there that are showing that as we are moving, and there are changes in the patterns of the oceans and where things are being grown, certain areas are thriving where other areas are going to have more droughts. Those are the things we need to worry about as to how are we going to help through those changes in the way that the environment is dealing with, not that we are actually causing it.
Okay, thank you. Well, now, when we talked earlier, I had warned you that there would be, if there was sufficient time, an opportunity for each one of you to ask your opponent in the contest that you're running for. And that question is, you can ask your opponent what question hasn't been addressed or what you would like to have them talk about. And we will start with the county. And Mr. Pothoff, do you have any questions for Mr. Nelson?
No, I do not.
And Mr. Nelson, do you have any question for Mr. Potoff?
Yeah, Mr. Potoff is not my enemy. He just happens to be up for reelection, and I can't. I really don't have anything I want to. I don't have anything I need to ask him specifically. He and I have known each other for a while. If there was something that we needed to talk about, we probably would. But
Nothing as far as political then?
yeah, correct.
And as far as our House District candidates, do either of you have a question that you would like to ask the other?
I don't.
Okay, I'm good.
Peace and love.
Yeah,
There we go.
Yeah, none of us are enemies here. We're all just wanting to do what's best for Dubuque and Dubuque County.
Yeah.
Good
That's
enough.
right.
All right, then we will wind this up with closing remarks. And since we started with Mr. Potoff at the beginning, we'll start with Mr. Warnke and come back this way for your closing remarks, please.
You've seen tonight a lot of similarity between us all. And that's because we come from mostly the same positions. We're going to differ on the minor points, perhaps major to some people, but we didn't get into any of that tonight. Please do what you can to look at the candidates in a little more detail. We are different people. We do have different views, and we just didn't bring it out tonight. We're not going to, drop the gloves and go after one another over our differences, but they're there. And I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to be here, for the opportunity to run for this office and to meet so many people out there knocking doors. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Ms. Smith.
I wanted to thank the League of Women Voters again for hosting this event. I have been very active in the Dubuque community for a very long time. This community, when I moved up here, I was by myself. It has accepted me 100%. I have found it to be an absolutely amazing place to live, to the point that my parents actually followed me up about 6 years ago after living elsewhere for over 30 years. I want to be able to give back to the community in every way possible. I have established relationships through a lot of the activities I've been involved with a lot of the legislators that are currently in office. I know Governor Reynolds, A.G. Byrd, Lieutenant Governor Gregg, as well as leadership, so I can get to work immediately. I don't have to establish those relationships because they already know who I am and how hard I will work. That is a benefit that I have that a lot of individuals don't, because often you have a learning curve and you have to establish those relationships of which I already have. I am also known to a lot of independent voters, which is critical to winning elections. And I really want people to understand that if you have any questions for me, please never hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information is very easy to find, and I will get back to you as quickly as I possibly can. Things are very busy right now with my life and door knocking and the campaign and everything. So it may take me a little bit. I may not get an instant response, but I will get back to you. And I am very much looking forward to hearing and talking to voters. I have learned so much from everybody as I'm out and about. And I humbly ask for your support on June 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
I think I said earlier that this is something I've always been interested in, and just recently became empty nesters. I've been married just shy of 30 years. We have 3 sons, and they're all out of the house now. And so this is something I've been wanting to pursue. People may wonder, what experience I may have running as a county supervisor. I have none, but I am a small business owner. My wife and I run a pizza restaurant that we've run. We bought a 3rd generation owner that we bought in 2009 from my mom, and things were well for a long time. 2009, in March of 2019, the governor shut down indoor dining for restaurants, which made it very difficult to make a living. But we adapted, we changed, and we worked harder than ever. and we survived, and we not only survived, we thrived, and we bought bought a new location and opened up that, and we've done very, very well. We run almost $1 million a year in our business, and as opposed to a budget, like there's not a lot of, as a county budget, like obviously they have a budget. When the county falls short of the budget, they just pass that on to the taxpayers. Whereas a small business owner, if you fall short of your budget, there's much more devastating ramifications. Number one, people are let go or fired, or you lose your business. That resolve that brought us through COVID and allowed us to survive is the same type of resolve that I plan on bringing to the table as a county supervisor. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Potoff.
I intend to continue working hard for the county. I am committed to Dubuque County. Obviously, I've lived here my whole life, had numerous opportunities to leave this area for other jobs, and I turned them all down and I stayed here. I want to see Dubuque and Dubuque County prosper. I want to see population growth. We have 7 colleges, I believe, here. We're teaching hundreds of students a year, if not more. We need to work to keep them here. You're going to lose some, but if we're teaching that many of our young adults and they're going somewhere else to get jobs, we could keep them here. But we have to have population growth and we have to retain some of these, but we also have to have tourism. And that's one of the biggest aspects of the Field of Dreams. Travel Dubuque is handling the youth tournament, that is youth tournaments that are taking place this summer. I'm on that board also. Right now there's over 430 teams coming to the Field of Dreams this summer. All of that adds to our economy. I'm on a DRA board. We had given a mission grant to ECIA. They went out throughout Dubuque County, Delaware, Jones, and basically listed all the amenities that each town had for, like Scott's business. Mm-hmm. And when these teams come in, they're presented with this. So they know where they can go to do whatever. The new hotel going in is much needed. Right now we have teams coming in and they're staying in Cedar Rapids because they can't get a room here. Well, after their games, they're going back to Cedar Rapids. They're not spending money here. The dollars they spend here help our small businesses and help our economy, fuel our economy. So, thank you for your past support, and I appreciate your future support. Thank you.
Thank you. The Dubuque League of Women Voters certainly appreciates the candidates and coming together to give our voters an opportunity to see who's running. And we would ask everyone who is watching these presentations that these are the folks who are going to be on that June 4th ballot. And so we want you to contemplate this, think about it, and then if you are a registered voter, a registered Republican, get June 4th and put that on your calendar and remember it. This forum may be seen again on City Channel Dubuque on Channel 8, Digital 117.2, and I'm on Channel 15. Thank you to City Cable Channel for providing this service, and thank you to you voters who came to be with us this evening and all of you who are watching. Take care and happy voting. Bye-bye.